like us, growing in years. We the goal to make a change of the world around your race. They've been able to set the pace.
Welcome to another thrilling episode as we engage another icon on your favourite programme, Youth Engage.
Today we engage another trailblazer in the field of medicine, academia and philosophy. A humble son of a local chemist who rose to be one of the first in Africa to achieve a mileage in the rare field. An academic par excellence whose contribution to the building of the educational structure in Nigeria is legendary. He's Professor O.O. Akinkugbe, CFR, MD, NNON. He was born in 1933 to the family of late Chief and Chief Mrs. O.O. Akinkugbe of Ondo Town. He had his secondary education in Government College Ibadan between 1946 and 1951. He was admitted to the University College, now known as the University of Ibadan, from 1951 to 1955, and later attended the University of London, from where he bagged his MBBS degree in 1958. Akinkugbe also obtained a diploma in tropical medicine and hygiene from Liverpool University in 1960, as well as a doctorate in philosophy from Oxford University in 1964. Professor Akinkugbe served in various capacities in developmental and health organizations, both locally and internationally. These include the World Health Organization, International Society of Hypertension, SIBA Foundation, and the Nigerian Association of Nephrology, among others. He became a professor of medicine at the University of Ibadan in 1968 and subsequently served as Dean of Medicine at the university, visiting professor of medicine at Harvard University between 1974 and 1975, Oxford University 1981 to 1982, and the University of Cape Town in 1994. Professor Akinkugbe also served as the Foundation Vice Chancellor of the University of Ilorin between 1975 and 1978, as well as Vice Chancellor Ahmadu Bello University between 1978 and 1979. He was also Pro-Chancellor and Chairman of Council at the University of Port Harcourt, Foundation Chair, Joint Admissions Matriculation Board, as well as the Chairman, Management Board, University College Hospital, Ibadan. He is a member of various international medical and scientific panels, and author of many papers on hypertension and renal diseases in national and international journals. In 1989, he received the SAIL Distinguished Research Award for his contributions to hypertension in black populations, and in 2004, the Beringer Ingelheim Award of the International Society of Hypertension. He was made Honorable Fellow of Balliol College, Oxford University in 2009, and has honorary doctorates from 6 Nigerian universities, including Ibadan. He's also been conferred traditional chieftaincy titles from Ile-Ife, Ondo, Ibadan, and Ijebu-Igbo. He's married to Professor Folashade Akinkugbe Ni Dina, and they have 2 sons and a set of grand twins. Welcome into the world of a man whose Ibadan Hypertension Clinic, a consulting center for all, and a magnificent structure he fondly called Little Summit attached, gives every youth the picture of an icon whose legacies must be celebrated. Welcome into the world of Professor O.O. Akinkugbe, CFR, MD, NNON.
As a young man, I'm sure you had goals that you wanted to achieve in future.
Yes.
And did you eventually achieve them according to how you wrote them down? And if you did, how did you implement the future goals?
Well, as a young man, you have to be what you call visionary, okay? That is, you have to set your goals. Now, of course, it's not always easy to achieve them in the way you plan, because certain circumstances may make you vary your plans, okay? There are people who have sort of had fantastic plan, but suddenly they lose their parent, and that diverts them completely because they cannot complete their education. But as I said earlier on, I was more fortunate that I had the opportunity and took them when I wished. Now, there's a thing in life you call seizing the moment, okay? That is, if an opportunity holds out and you don't take it, I don't say grab it, okay? But take that opportunity. You may in fact go astray. But in my own case, I believe I was very fortunate. In my department in Oxford, there was a man called Sir George Pickering, who was the Regius Professor of Medicine. And when I got to his department, he said to me, I was the very first African that was coming to his department. And so he was keen to see how I would perform. About a month later, he called me to his office and said, this is a paper I'd like you to look at for me. I've just sent it to the American Journal of Medicine. See what you think of it. And of course, I looked at it and I found so many errors. And I couldn't sleep. And I said, how can a Regius Professor make so many mistakes? And so I didn't know what to say. So after a week, he called me and said, how did you find that paper? And I said, Sir George, I'm really sorry. It's a lousy paper. I said, what? And he said, well, tell me. A, B, C, D. Then I said, well, I'm sorry. I cannot, this paper will not be acceptable at international level. And he called his secretary immediately and said, can you withdraw that paper across the Atlantic? I gather a year later that he didn't actually send the paper, okay? That was a test. If I had said it was an excellent paper, I probably would not have lasted in the department. And he'd done that to a few people whom he had shown the door, okay? So again, a lot depends on a mix of things, good fortune and courage as a young man. And one must not be shy of pointing out things. When you feel that this is the way, you must be brave enough to say, well, yeah, sorry, but this is the way you see. Eventually, people will respect your views that way. It's not that you say things that people want to hear. And that's not only in science. It applies in various walks of life. That if you say it as it is, without prejudice, and that's the essence of scholarship. Scholarship does not design that. Oh, well, this man has a nice face, he's very gentle, he's very polite, therefore whatever he says must be right, okay? So really, it's very important in life to say things as they are, and not because you are trying to curry favor or invite the pleasure of somebody's acceptance. We have just said about one must have the courage of his conviction and the conviction of one's courage, okay? If that's not an Irishism. You see, there are many things wrong in societies. If you look at the Nigerian society today, there are so many things that are wrong, okay? But to change this is not given to one person. It's not easy, particularly if you are operating in a kind of landscape in the forefront of political activity. If I went to my constituency in Ondo today, I may lose an election, okay? It's not because people feel I'm not capable, but there are certain things you do and don't do that will make you win or lose an election. People who cannot sell their conscience, for example, may lose elections. Okay? Because the mood of society may be such that it's the kind of the highest bidder. Okay? And when you are not used to corruption, and corruption seems to be one of the sine qua nons, okay, to get to the top, then it's a losing battle. I was at a luncheon many years ago in London when some very prominent Nigerian was being honored. There were speeches made. It was a big gathering. And every Nigerian that spoke about that man said, oh, so-and-so, I won't name him now, so-and-so is an honest person, he's God-fearing, he's doing this. And of course, there were a lot of expatriates there. And one of them nudged me after his head honest and said, look, Akin, are you not supposed to be honest in your country? Why are you making so much song and dance about so-and-so is honest, God-fearing? That in their own culture, they take honesty for granted. It's when you are dishonest that people take notice and say, well, this is against the grain. And that set me thinking that why do we make so much song and dance of honesty? If everybody in this room is honest, why do we need to worry? Now, that's a very important observation. And I believe agents for change, and they are not determined by age or sex, they are the kinds of people who, through their behavior, their general attitude in life, will conjure respect. And people who stick to certain set of values, which young people today might regard as old-fashioned. In my time going to a village, you see at intersections, various fruits, oranges, bananas, and put in the intersections. And people walk past and leave the money. That is, they would take X number of oranges and they would put the money there and go. Person who is hawking this orange need not be there. At the end of the day, he or she will come and pick the money up. Now today, not only will the fruits disappear, the money will also disappear. And the person might get killed. Now, why have we gone to that extent? It's not that the person who, in those days, was putting this out, it's not that he or she was self-sufficient. But the general attitude at the time was such that if anybody did something against the grain, the sanctions would be heavy. I was at school when some people at a bank, some bank officials were apprehended for fraud. And people used to ride Oldsmobile and big cars. Within a short time, they were apprehended, taken to court, and jailed with no option of fine. And then we used to go and see them in government quarters cutting grass with prison uniform. Now that goes a long way, because if your family did this at the time, that's the end of the family name. And that is why in many Yoruba names you would find, there's hardly any home you won't have Ola or Aki. Ola is a sense of honor. What's your own name? But you would find that there are Olas, and of course Ondo will be Akins because they are warriors. But the point one must make is that there were certain things that were just not done. And today, lack of sanctions is one of the biggest problems. And any agent of change must be able to preach that from the housetops, that In the US today, there's what's called the 11th commandment. That shall not be cut out, okay? Because whether you are president or not, if you don't pay your tax or do something that you should be doing, you're gone. They will deal with it. There is no question of hiding under an immune clause, okay? So really, we must learn what things constitute the agency of change. If you are honest, if society itself has its own sanctions properly imposed, if you look around and lift people, help people along, if you plan not for yourself or your family, but for society, these are the ingredients of change. And I believe that as youth, if you begin to pick up some of these virtues, it will stand you in very good stead later in life in terms of leadership. And people we mentioned today, whether it's Obama or Lee Kuan Yew or some British prime ministers, it's not that they have a genetic kind of advantage. It's because they've been able to imbibe certain basic qualities that make them stand out. But here, what makes you stand out is probably some kind of vice. Okay? And if you promote this long enough, people will forget your bad sides.
What measures can be taken to correct the downward spiral of brain drain in the country?
Now, at one time, it wasn't just brain drain, it was what you call brain hemorrhage. Because everybody was leaving, okay? And there was even a time I was tempted to go to either the US or to go to Saudi Arabia, okay? Because the offers there were just out of this world and one felt tempted. But I've always felt in my own mind that I was trained to be a doctor to help my own people. Okay? Now that's a very fundamental point, that it's not just a material things in life. That why do I want to now go and practice my skills in a foreign land and giving help and succor to foreign people when my own people are suffering? So that has always been my philosophy, that I did not give much thought to leaving Nigeria, okay? Although that had its own problems, because you would find that it's sometimes difficult to make ends meet, okay? But I've never been overdazzled by the prospects of wealth. Unfortunately, I have a wife who has that same attitude to life, okay? Because we are content with what we have. Brain drain is something that will probably continue for quite some time, because you'll find that even when people go out and people like me talk to them and say, well, come back after 10 years, 15 years. They will come back, and then after about a year they get restless again, because they would feel disappointed that things are not moving. Now, it takes a particular attitude to really control yourself in terms of what you want in life. And if material acquisition is the major criterion, then it's difficult to persuade people to stay on. So there are so many inadequacies in our midst. Now, about 10 years ago, or a little over, I was challenged or asked to help with revamping the teaching hospitals in this country. And there were about 18 of them then. Now, my first task was to go around all the teaching hospitals, find out what sort of equipment they had, which is working, which is not working, and if it's not working, why it is So I then made an inventory of all equipment in all teaching hospitals in this country with a small team, and produced a document called the Green Book in the Ministry of Health. After I produced this, I then said, okay, what do you need to have a first-class 5-star hospital? And I then went round to various heads of departments, say, give me a full inventory of what you will need in the Department of Ophthalmology, or Department of ENT, or Medicine, or Obstetrics. What equipment would you need? And each of them gave a list of various things that would form a 5-star hospital. And I collated all this and said, okay, we costed them and said, to have a 5-star teaching hospital, these are the things you must have. Okay? And this report then went to the Federal Executive Council at the time, and then said, okay, we have enough money just to look after 8 teaching hospitals to start with. And that was about 17 billion naira. To buy CT scans, MRI, various labs, equipment, dialysis machines and all that. And so we set about transforming these teaching hospitals then. I think Ibadan, Luth, Ilorin, Zaria, Jos, about 8 of them, Suka or Enugu. And when we did this, we then said, okay, we'll move from there to the remaining 6 to 8 teaching hospitals, and they've been done. Now, unfortunately, just supplying equipment to the hospital does not always mean that your troubles are over, because the human capital that are running these hospitals, if they are diverted in terms of their own private practice downtown, they may not be able to concentrate fully on serving the teaching hospitals. In my own time as a young physician, there was no question of doing private practice, okay? You had to just concentrate on work in the teaching hospital. And so at 7 p.m. under the ramp in UCH, there were cars under the ramp. People were in their laboratories or in the wards working. But today, if you go to the average teaching hospitals, you'll find many of the consultant staff are downtown, moonlighting on private practice, okay? Now, that has made standards fall, because it's divided loyalty. So, things have not gone as well as one would wish, and the brain drain continues unless you are so strong-willed and saying, whatever happens, I will remain.
What advice do you have for the youth of this country?
Now, the advice I have, first of all, is to look up to your elders and see that you imbibe some of their good qualities. And you must observe, listen, and learn. Okay? Now, I liken this to a glass in which you pour some soft drink, and there may be a bit of foam. Now, when you are handed the glass, let the foam go down before you start drinking. It's the cup of wisdom, which does not foam, okay? Because if you drink the foam, all the liquid will pour on your face. Have you tried that before? Okay. So now, to be less dramatic, the youth of this country have a lot to learn from the simple ways in which many elders who have really acquired a lot in terms of a value system, not money. I'm not saying that you should strive to commend the very poor people, and to say you turn your nose against rich people. Because rich people, there are all kinds of rich people in this world, in Nigeria in particular. There are those who peddle, funds, who cheat and get to the top only to come down like a pack of cards. Because money that's ill-gotten, will always show that it doesn't endure, okay? So I think the kind of advice one would give young people is to always try to be honest and also try to work very hard so that whatever you acquire in life, you deserve it. It's not as if you make shortcuts. So this would be my general advice to you, and I hope that one day you will end up as a nephrologist.
Thank you, sir.
At least if you read medicine, I'll be satisfied with that.